Welcome to Biracial Broadcast, where we explore the vibrant and complex world of biracial identity with a mix of humor, honesty, and insight. This podcast is a go-to source for real talk. We're going to dive into everything from family dynamics, privilege, and the challenges of being biracial, tackling issues like discrimination and racism, all while keeping things light, fun, and casual. Tune in bi-weekly for a mix of solo episodes, lively co-host banter, and guest interviews that bring diverse perspectives to the table. Are you ready to get biracial with us? Crank up the volume, hit that subscribe button, and let's jump into the conversation today. All right. Well, what is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the
I'm
Biracial
your
Broadcast.
co-host,
I'm your
Justin
host, Jay.
Dawson,
And
Young
what
Rob
is
World,
going
Young Rob
on
World.
tonight, Pops?
So yeah, no, and I just got out of the gym, so I don't have the best lighting, but and I got to keep the sexy up, so I'm here.
One of us has to keep the sexy up, and it's definitely not me. You carry that for the team here. Hope your back doesn't hurt too much for that.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
But, I'm looking decent. Yeah, you are. Real fine. Anyways, so I'm just over here chilling. I'm excited to jump into this awesome episode we got on the docket today. And I'm really excited to cover what we're going to cover today. And we got a really good one for the people today, from the people today. So, as you know, but listeners don't know, I recently jumped onto Reddit. I've always kind of been in and out on Reddit, where I'm like, it's cool. I've never really I've read subreddits, things like that. People send me the links, things like that. But I've never been on Reddit until about 10 days ago. And I have found a great subreddit called Mixed Race. And it's been really, really cool to have some refreshing conversations, a lot of DMs, and just some really cool conversations for the most part. So, you ever been on Reddit? Do you like Reddit?
I think
What are
Reddit's
your
hilarious.
thoughts as an older man on Reddit?
I used to read reviews of other contractors, 'cause I'm a general contractor, so I used to go on there and read reviews of other general contractors that get the terrible reviews, and it would just be freaking hilarious. And I never popped up on there, thank God. And I think Reddit's hilarious.
Thank goodness. That's awesome. No, so it's really cool, but this subreddit especially is really cool. So first off, I asked I got approved as a poster there after posting one time, which was really cool. Because Reddit, if you're in your first 2 weeks, it's really hard to post and it's really hard to communicate with other Redditors on there. So that's a challenge for the first couple weeks. So that's exactly where I'm at. But I got approved on this one pretty quickly, which was really cool to see. So I asked the people of Reddit what they would want us to talk about, just to kind of start, brainstorming, getting ideas. And we heard you. And we're going to explore some of those topics on future episodes, some of them including experiencing racism from different sides, the racism individuals face from different racial or ethnic groups they belong to, feeling caught between cultures, which I thought was really cool. This was a little different, but fetishization of mixed race people. The idea of being seen as a product of fetishization due to being mixed race or biracial. Not feeling enough of one race or ethnicity, identity and cultural awareness, dating in-laws, kids, and mixed race families, something we'll of course talk about and continuously talk about. Combining cultural heritage, which I thought was really cool because now, especially in America, we're seeing a lot more biracial people get with other biracial people, different things. So now instead of just collaborating 2 cultures, you could be collaborating 4 cultures into one home, which is really interesting. Celebrations, traditions in mixed race households, and then preserving traditions kind of round out the list. So those were the topics that were all submitted, which I thought was really cool to get that much feedback right away. Lots of fun topics. But we aren't going to jump into those today. Instead, I asked the mixed people of Reddit the following 3 questions. Also, shout out to ChatGPT for helping me condense all these answers and get them all into one spot so I didn't have to copy paste and lose a bunch of time. So the first question here, and did you want to answer these questions before or after
as they're
the Reddit
answered.
responses?
I mean, as they're asked. As you read them, let's talk about each question and then go to the next one.
Okay, so we'll give you guys our answer and then we'll talk about what the people of Reddit say. So curious, give me your definition of ethnicity and your definition of race.
Well, race is simple. That's just your genetics, you're black, you're white, you're mixed, you're whatever. So race is, I could be me being half black and half white, and my kids being well, not you, but my other ones being a quarter black and a quarter white and half Mexican. That's basically what all of South America is, and we're kind of all the same race. In Puerto Rico, it's black, it's native, and it's white, and that's a common thread of a lot of people. So that's definitely race. But then you kind of go into ethnicity, and even though me and the people in, say, Puerto Rico are more or less the same race, we have a completely different ethnicity as far as culture and traditions. So I think the ethnicity is culture and traditions, probably some religion in there. I think ethnicity is very almost not real, like it can be adopted, you know? I don't think I think ethnicity is almost made up. It's almost make believe, you know? It's almost not real. I mean, it's real, but it's more of like, you know, traditions, stuff that can be changed, you know, stuff that can be modified. So that's my answer.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I would say race is more or less like your genetics, exactly what you are. Like I'm half white, but I'm 3/8 African American. Since I learned that Haitian isn't a Pacific Islander, it's actually a African descent that's the same blood as African descendees who were here in America. So I learned that this week. I didn't know that before. That was really cool to learn. So yeah, race I think is your genetic makeup as well, and I think ethnicity
A
is more very
concept.
loose.
That's
It's kind of just a
actually the word I was
concept
looking
where
for.
it's like,
Ethnicity is a concept. That's a good answer.
yeah, I think it's more of a concept. Like race is, I feel like race is the box I check, but
Yeah.
ethnicity is like actually who I'm like hanging out with, who I'm getting down with, you know, or how I'm getting down. So, wanted to hit some of these answers from Reddit, and feel free to respond to any of them that do or don't make sense. So the first one is from glittering_south 5178. They are Cantonese, Portuguese, Russian, and Tatar, which is really cool in this mixed race study. You kind of have to identify like what you are, and so it kind of flows into all your answers. But they said, hey, I teach a class on the distinction, and there really isn't an easy answer because both categories blur into each other. Here's the best working definition I've been able to come up with. I don't expect everyone to agree, but it's the one I find most useful. Race is a modern concept that cannot be separated from the advent European colonialism. What we see today is its residue. Colonialists needed an effective and efficient way to sort people into groups, such as that they could be assigned rights and privileges or none, such as the right to earn wages or not having a right against being sold into slavery. It is a very blunt tool, and that's why who makes up a certain race can differ depending on the country and its socio-historical context. For example, in the US, a person's race could change overnight with the abandonment of the one drop rule. Race also has harder boundaries, insofar that you cannot change your racial identity at will. Your race is essentially decided for you by the society you live in. And then ethnicity, this person says, this is a long answer, so bear with me, everybody. I tend to understand ethnicity as a concept that predated European colonialism. For the longest time, people all over the world had names for the groups they belonged to based on ancestral, physical, or cultural attributes, plus a ready sense of in and out groups. But ethnicity is not the same thing as race for these reasons. One, race tends to group ethnics together in a somewhat arbitrary way, and ethnicities who have no identifications with each other or have a history of animosity toward each other are often considered to be of the same race. Two, ethnicity has softer boundaries than race insofar as individuals have more leeway to decide on which ethnicity they choose to identify as. And three, unlike race, ethnicity is not typically used as an instrument of oppression, exploitation, or violence. Whenever ethnicity begins to be used in this manner, we can say that ethnicity is becoming racialized. However, this isn't statistic, and the group status can change over time. One example in this case of Italian and Irish migrants to the U.S. who were initially not considered to be white and subject to be demeaning and discriminatory treatment, yet are considered to be white ethnic groups today and are largely free from such abuses. Similarly, while Latino is considered to be a race by many today, it is made up of many disparate groups who do not necessarily identify at all with each other. And Latin Americans arguably only become racialized due to factors like the exploitation of migrant workers and an uptick in state-sanctioned border controls that sought to catch undocumented migrants on the basis of things like Mexican appearance. And then they said, I hope this made sense.
Well,
So,
I thought it was definitely too many
did that
words
make
to
sense?
begin with, but yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense. I mean, like it does make sense. I wouldn't agree with the ethnicity not being like a place of discrimination, and if it does, it gets violent. Blah blah blah. I mean, I think that a lot of I think ethnicity is tied very close to religion. Like I think they go hand in hand, and so I think maybe if somebody has discrimination or whatever from like religion, that's probably discriminating about the ethnicity. But it basically said the same thing. I mean, and that the ethnicity is a concept and it can be changed. Race is who you are. You can be the same race and be in completely different ethnicities, like the same example that I brought up of being the same race of person being in Puerto Rico or Colombia or wherever it is, So, yeah, I would agree with that, basically. It was very wordy, but other than that,
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with it for the most part. Yeah, it was a lot of words. Someone who teaches on it would say that many words. So it was still a really, really, really good answer. Very detailed. We love a detailed answer. Someone that takes their time to really type that up and to give that much thought into it is really cool to see. Strangers on Reddit. This next one is from Peligro Amarillo. He said, race, and you're going to like this one. Race, the prison gang you end up in. Ethnicity, who your parents are mad at you for dating. Now, it makes sense because prison, you kind of just
well,
end up
I mean,
separated. As far as TV portrays, I've never been to prison.
let me kind of
I thought
comment
this
on
one
this.
had some humor to it.
So I have been incarcerated, but for nothing serious. It was
Please.
just some teenage and some other stuff, but nothing too serious. But I was in there for a week, and the first thing they said is when I went into the cell is like, "Are you with the blacks? Are you with the Mexicans? Like, which one are you?" And I'm like, and they're like, "So what are you?" I'm like, "Well, I'm half black." And they're like, "We're gonna come with us." And then they got the others, they got the Vietnamese, this was county, so they got the black, they got the white, they have the Latinos, and then they have the others. So they're like, "Are you other or are you black?" I said, "Well, I'm black." I said, "Okay, well, you come with us then." I said, "Okay." So yeah, that was just an example, but go ahead.
So yeah, I think it's true. Kind of like the first person said, this kind of builds on that. It literally is like how you're separated and how you like the group you end up in. Even though you may be from different ethnic groups, you kind of end up being in the same prison gang, regardless. And that ethnicity I thought was funny. Who your parents are mad at you for dating. I mean, I just thought that was funny. I don't know why I thought that was funny. The last one here for this answer comes from consistent-citron 513. In a very small nutshell. This one's not wordy, so you're gonna appreciate this one.
I think that's a great answer. I don't even have any comments on that. I think that's a great answer. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely,
No, I thought this one was
I was going to say
I thought
something
this one
about
was
the race can
spot
change,
on.
let's
Like
ask, but he
nail
hit it
on the
on the
head.
nose, and I think that's a great answer, and I couldn't say it any better than what he did.
So number 3, consistent citron 513. Your trophies in the mail for the best answer to question 1 here. So congratulations if you're listening to this. The next question here. This one was a pretty straightforward one. Question: are you embarrassed, ashamed, or scared of any parts of yourself? And I'm gonna hit this one first because I can honestly say yes. There was a time in my life before I lived with you when I was a teenager that I was legit embarrassed to be black or brown or to be tan or to be darker than like my peers during the summertime and stuff. And I was embarrassed to admit it. I was ashamed to admit it. And then when I went to high school in Oakland for the first couple years, when I was just white, I was definitely ashamed of being white because I was shamed for being white, especially in 10th grade when you go through U.S. history. That was a big wake up call for me because like I was shamed to be white. I was like, man, I'm so ashamed of my white side. Like the running joke at that time in that class was, well, I owned myself back in the day, kind of thing. And so that was just a joke in the class. Still remember it. I'm pretty sure it was Bernardo who made it, and he's like the one. He was like one of the 3 Mexican dudes that were in our school. So, however that ended up working, it worked. But yeah. So at the time, I did yes. Now, no. I fully embrace all my different parts of me. Not embarrassed or ashamed or really scared of any parts of myself. I'm more scared to like take a 23andMe to see like what else is in there. But time will tell.
I would say, I mean, now, no, I fully, like you, like I fully embrace myself of who I am. I don't know that I was ever, I was never embarrassed to be black. I can say that. Always kind of wish I was more black than I was white. So I guess at a certain time, maybe I was a little bit ashamed of being half white, but it really wasn't because it really wasn't because I was ashamed. It was because I was kind of transitioning I was kind of going into being more of with my black friends and my black side. And it was a little like you're like half white, so you're like kind of not like really black. So I was kind of maybe 10, 12. I was a little embarrassed, but that was after all the stuff happened with all the kids. And we moved to the south into Seattle, and I was with more people of color. When that first happened, then I think I was a little bit embarrassed of being white, but not really so much. I've definitely have embraced it for a really long time, just kind of who I am. And obviously, as you get older, and since I'm old as dirt, I mean, things always kind of your mind and your habits and your habits actually don't change that much, honestly. But your thoughts and your views of things do change. Yeah, so that's
all the older and all the wiser as well. So I'm just going to run through a few of these. The consensus is pretty much out. The jury's out on this. It's pretty much a no, but my hero is underscore me. LMAO, no, waste of time and energy. Every person on the planet has weird stuff in their family tree. If you go back far enough, I don't see the point in feeling bad about what they or may not have done any more than I feel the need to claim their accomplishments as my own. Shigeko underscore Tegeyama, of course not. What would be the point in that? I am when I am. I think they meant to say I am what I am. Competitive rain 403 here, half Korean. I wouldn't say I'm shameful of who I am, but I guess it is awkward when full Asians ask if my dad, white, has an current worst 9121. No, it's stupid. Why should anyone be ashamed or embarrassed of any part of their family until they careful and loving? I would be ashamed if one of my family members was bigot or hypocrite, but it's still not my problem. And then a couple more here. Lil underscore Jordy C. Cool username, by the way. Sometimes I find myself wishing I looked more Polynesian, but I don't let it affect my mood because I am who I am and that's good enough. I'm reminded I look ethnic enough when I have experiences like today, where an old man asked, "Where are you from?" And I responded with a nearby city, and he says, "I would have thought a foreign country. LOL." I know he was just trying to be nice and make a connection or something, but I couldn't help but find it funny. And then last one, enlightened Redditor. I wouldn't say I'm ashamed, but I'm more so scared. I'm a mixed light-skinned guy. The amount of colorism that I face, which is specifically and only from the black community, is insane. But at the end of the day, I came to terms with it and was eventually proud of it. But it
that's the
really
same
makes
thing
me
I said
realize how
last week.
shitty some people are. That was over.
Nah, I guess
Yeah.
I kind of like the guy that said that I'd be more ashamed if there were bigots in my family, and I would kind of, and I think I like that answer. I think that's the winner on this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's bigger things to worry about, you know? Because, I mean, your family, you guys are all the same thing. But if there was someone specifically that was against any part of your family, even though they share that same culture and that same identity as you, it really doesn't make sense to me when that happens. And I currently have a family member who I'm not talking to because of that. So sometimes you do have to cut them off and save yourself some peace. And so last question here, and this one's probably my favorite that I thought was really cool. Do people, or actually, I'll ask the question and I want you to give me the context for this question, like the book and everything. So this question was inspired from a book. Do people see you for the race / ethnicity
Am I
that
answering
you
this?
don't really identify with? Yes, please tell us the
So
kind
you
of the
want me to answer
context behind
this?
this from where this one came from.
Okay, I thought you were going to read the answers.
Yes.
You know, I mean, answer. I mean, just kind of ask that question again. There's so many. I mean, this is like a pretty, this is like a pretty complex question. It's not that easy.
So
But go ahead and ask the question again.
yeah, so this question spurred
Oh,
from you telling me about that book that you read. I don't remember the
okay,
name of
yeah.
it, but
Oh,
there
yeah.
was
So
that
yeah, so
white dude.
that was a Donald Goines book. If anybody's read the Donald Goines books, they were in the '60s. They were he was an author that wrote about the streets of Detroit or something, but he wrote a lot about prostitution and pimps and this and that. But anyway, the book was called Trick Baby, and they made a movie out of it actually in the '70s or the early '80s. It was called Trick Baby, and basically this guy was a trick baby. He was a product of prostitution. Thus, Trick being the trick, the guy that pays for whatever. I'm hoping people understand this. Anyway, so the book was called Trick Baby, and they called him white folks. And the reason they called him white folks is because he was completely white passing, but he grew up in South Detroit in the hood around everything, and he was not even anywhere like remotely of like culturally white. But he played on it, and he was able to pass and be a little bit more successful than his other peers, you know. But as far as me being identified, I mean, I'm just kind of people think I mean, I've had people ask if I had this guy asked me the other day if I'm Indian. I'm like, no, dude, I'm not Indian. But that's just because people aren't I just had to make sure that my battery didn't die because I'm in my truck. So, me, me. If
Well,
people look at me, they would probably think I'm Latino, or and I get a lot of that. Obviously, some people, most people here in the United States, they see me and they know that I'm black or mixed with black because I just kind of look like a mixed person, you know. Once I open my mouth, people, like, even my other son, he actually called me a white man the other day. He's like, "You're a white man." I'm like, "Geez, okay, fine," and I'm like, "Not really, but okay, that's fine. That's what you think." Norma, my ex-wife, she says the same thing. Like, "You're just basically white. You're white," and I'm like, I mean, I'm not. I don't feel like I am. So I definitely get that. I definitely do get that. But it doesn't bother me anymore. It's like somebody calling me Jason instead of Justin. So it's just kind of, people are kind of not very
well,
smart sometimes.
yeah, and we'll get into these answers here in a second, but I also want to hit it. I agree. I feel like people like to make assumptions based on like what they see and what they perceive. Like, oh, that guy's kind of brown, he has some long hair. Oh, maybe he's this, maybe he's that. Oh, but he speaks Spanish, so he's probably, Latino or something. And I swear, I get stares when I'm out in public with my wife. She's Mexican and darker than I am, and so when it's me and my girls and her, there's some weird looks that happen because my girls are white. They're little octoroons, so they're 1/8 African American. Actually, no, they're actually more because 3/8. Well, they're a little bit more than an eight. So, anyways, like I was saying, uh, definitely seen this one where people like just don't know. Some people think I'm Latino. Some people think I'm just white. Some people are like, you're something else. The one race or the one demographic of people who can always, like 99% of the time, guess that I'm part black. There's only one demographic of people outside of my immediate family. Older black ladies. I don't know why, but older black ladies just have this sixth sense and they're just like, "Oh yeah, you're black." I don't know how many I've met that are like, "Oh yeah, you got some black in you, don't you?" Just by talking to them for a little bit. I don't know. It's a weird sixth sense. I think it's the coolest thing. But yeah, so this one has some great ones, and then we'll get into the story time here. See, this one from Nightingale, and invalidate my identity. I'm mixed, indigenous, and white, but neither of those can be removed and still be accurate, and yet people love to say they know better than I do. Uh, so I thought that was an interesting point here because everyone likes to say that they know what you are more than you are. The next one's from Orange Cookies with a Z. I'm mixed, indigenous, and white too, and just got out of a required for new hires training session for work on race issues. Since I'm white presenting, there were definitely some jaws hitting the floor when I introduced myself to my colleagues in an indigenous language I speak, and then in English. My boss, who was leading the training, had just finished saying you couldn't always tell someone's racial background by just looking, which I thought that last part was really
I
interesting.
mean,
I want to
I
hit
mean,
that. Like,
I kind of like
you
the
don't
other
know,
person before
right?
this
You
one.
can't just,
Um, because I mean, what I see with like a lot of like mixed people is they're trying so hard to like not look, not be who they are, like not embrace 100% of themselves. Like that, the question before where the lady said, "I feel like I'm racially ambiguous and it's really great." I mean, being racially ambiguous or being just ambiguous in general is great. I mean, it's just you get a lot of complaints. I just like these are like I don't know. I think it goes back to our previous question. I think they just like they just need to kind of be who they are culturally, racially. It doesn't matter, and just be okay with it. And there's nothing wrong with being white passing or whatever. It's just kind of. And I think at the end of the day, like most people just don't really care anyway. So I think a lot, and I think mixed people overthink race like way too much.
yeah. I bet you mean it makes sense why though. I mean, if you think about it, like someone who's not mixed race or biracial or have multiple like races in them, like they don't think about it. They don't think about it. They just know like their life through this one lens versus someone who may see their self through three or four different lenses at any given time. And I think it's important to recognize that because it is hard to be ambiguous, but it's also important to just accept yourself for who you are. So I think there's a self acceptance journey that has to happen through this. I mean, you live and learn, right? Like like I said, there was a lot of time just how I was raised and stuff that I didn't like certain parts of myself. I was not cool with it. And then I got to know those parts of myself, and I had experience with those parts of myself. That sounds weird. Pause. Pause.
Oh, well, that's yeah. I mean, I'm really glad you're able to
Pause.
experience parts of yourself.
I'm clipping this. I'm clipping this. Clipping this part right here. Next one is from Throw It All Away. Perfect. What a great username right now. Throw It All Away 24. Nope. I'm the same mix as you. Same proportions, actually. And people think I'm South Asian or Indian. Interesting. And people from India think I'm Indian until I open my mouth. And sometimes all it takes is you just opening your mouth and speaking. And then people are like, whoa. I think it really goes back to a lot of stereotypes, right? Like people stereotype different people into different categories and have that, unconscious bias towards different ethnic groups, towards different, racial groups, colorism, whatever, all the different things. And they think, oh, well, this person's white presenting. Maybe they're real, assuming they're well educated or there's something else kind of thing. Not always true. I know some really dumb white people, like a lot of dumb white people. But then there's some of the smartest people I know and smartest people I've talked to that are black or Indian or Hispanic. Like
No, and neither does
intelligence
stupidity.
doesn't discriminate.
FYI.
No, it doesn't. And so I think it's really important to just remember that, like, don't judge a book by its cover, because the contents of that book may be your favorite book of all time, but you were judging it by the cover, and now you just missed out on a really good book. So this runs from Mutt6519. Depends on who's looking at me, which, makes sense. Blacks, Spanish, Asians perceive me as white or Spanish, and white see me as black or Spanish.
I think
again, it's really based off their perception.
I think that's
Everyone
the best
has a different
right
thing.
there.
Oh,
I think that's the best answer right there.
no, I think it's a good one too. I really like this one too, and then I have a story time that we're gonna get into because someone wrote in a nice long story, and it's kind of funny. So this last one here is from SIO85. Yep, it's a strange phenomenon that non-mixed people seem obsessed with telling you what you are. Even the question is loaded because whatever you say, they know better. And again, depends on who's looking at you and what they want to tell you that you are. People love to know you better than you. So, and then a story time. So this is a nice story time here from anxious emphasis 255. So anxious underscore emphasis underscore 255. Story time here. Before I reach my 20s, nope. After 20s, it just doesn't stop. During the critical development stages of my life, I was raised by my step grandma and non-black family members of the community as a substitute for the lack of physical presence, though still present in my life, biological father. While my mama and her snow bunny husband at the time were going on vacations and partying all the damn time. I'm 26 and I just had the conversation with my mama 2 days ago, and she was asking why I'm so dominantly black instead of being dominantly European. I told her straight up, this isn't nothing new. I've been like this since we came to the States when I was 5 years old. You would have known if you just paid attention back then. My mama ain't even the European parent. My dad is. But he's also black. He's also black parent because he's half black American and I'm half European. It's also no surprise that I don't feel a single inch of European spirit in my body because, like, who was going to instill that into me if my dad wasn't there and my paternal grandparents definitely wasn't there? Spoiler, she's a deadbeat, anti-Middle Eastern bitch that was waiting for me to become an adult so that she could create a whole fucking hectic situation so that she can openly talk about how much she hates me now just because I wasn't going to tolerate her Islamophobia, which was actually just an anti-Middle Eastern racism. She tried to become my op as soon as the opportunity presented itself. Like, woohoo, honey. Is that what it means to be white? You can keep that. For me, I'm dominantly black and Kazaka, Kazakh. Yeah, I know that's Central Asian, but it clicks faster to people when I'm talking about my family history when I say I'm Middle Eastern, especially since a lot of the discrimination Middle Eastern and Central Asian people face overlap in a lot of ways. My mom is the one that is weird, but common phase when she tries to perceive as white as possible. So she's constantly at my throat for having an estranged relationship to whiteness. That was never my fault to begin with. She's constantly telling me shit like how she wishes my dad would have been some other ethnicity or race, and man, how I get
Lock it with
all
the
the bad
cord.
genes from your dad. It's kind of hard to tell where she's at right now. Well, where she's at right now with this delusional insensibility or this delusional mentality, because she actually has been putting into the work to understand her side of the family history better and communicating that to me, but it's now convoluted because that weird white wannabe phase is still showing heavy signs of being there. The level of disconnect I feel from being German Romanian is debilitating, to say the least. Because I literally have only had like one positive interaction with a white person my entire life to this day. Most white people think it's such a huge insult to them that I'm this awkward about being mixed while white, despite having the color to pass. They really think I chose to be clueless, because how were you able to go this long without being around white people? Stop talking like that. Why does your hair look like that? Are you really just naturally like that? A little bonus, I don't like having my hair touched. I don't know where people's hands been most of the time. When a white person or any non-black person touches a black person's hair and that black person tells them they don't like that, the non-black person usually apologizes for some reason that they always want to argue with me about my own boundaries when they try to touch my hair. It's like they get me mad because I'm supposed to be safe to touch because of my color. They couldn't get away with touching a full black person's hair. They really think I'm supposed to be safe to touch with no questions asked and no consent, depending on time. And yeah, so that was the story. What are your thoughts on this story here?
I mean, well, my first thought is that, I think it's, once again, way too many words. I think the story kind of sucks. I think he has a lot of resentment in general. And it's just like this is the kind of complexes that a lot of mixed people have. They just go on about, oh, well, they don't like this and they don't like that and Islamophobia, and they just kind of bait themselves almost. I just don't really agree with his pattern of thinking, like, at all. I think he's feeling sorry for himself a little bit, honestly. And I think he's a very negative person. And I think his answer sucks. And his story sucks too. So that's my opinion. So
I like it. I respect it. I think it's interesting here because, I was raised by my grandmother, my mom's mom. So I was raised by my maternal grandmother. And there was a lot of negativity that came from her side towards our side of the family. And it's really interesting going through that and not really understanding one side, because all you hear is hate from the other side. And it's not really a balance of opinion, right? It's like when you're trying to get all your information from one textbook, but there's still 20 other textbooks out there, right, to teach you about something. And so I think a lot of this is just a lack of having their own education too, to where they're not fully invested in getting to know all the parts of themselves. And there's a lot of finger pointing, and there's not enough pointing the finger inward to where, I need to learn about this part of me, or I need to learn about the Middle Eastern part of me, or I'm just like this part kind of thing. So it's really important to understand these complexes, and a lot of mixed people have
like,
these
that's the
complexes.
thing, though, was like, I was telling somebody this about 9 months ago. I said, like, man, mixed people are probably like some of the most mixed up and confused people in general. And not that they have to be, but I think it goes back to the very, 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 very first question, like, they're the second question, like they're not fully accepting themselves, I mean, like, and I got to the point to where people ask me, like, well, I haven't got it asked in a while, but people would ask me, like, so what race are you? And I would just be like, I'm racially ambiguous. I'm racially ambiguous. I don't, I can tell you, but it's not really going to matter. And I think that, like, mixed people have a lot based on that last guy. I mean, it was just kind of way too wordy. It was just so much negativity. And my mom was partying with my dad with the snow bunnies. Like, that's your fucking business. It's got nothing to do with you. You're just overall feeling sorry for yourself, and you're not really accepting yourself for who you are, and you're really like overcompensating. Well, I'm black because I look black. And like, who gives a shit? Like, you're whatever his name was. That's who you are. I mean, it's not. Yeah, like, mixed people are so, like, it's just like they're really, in general, like, they're really kind of, not all of them, but a lot of them are just really kind of messed up because they think about it too much, and they overthink it. Like, like, you're not, Cantonese and Portuguese or whatever the fuck it was. You're Sarah, and that's it.
Yeah. No, I think I think a lot of this comes back to, the home environment, right? If I would have never had any life experience with you or had any time spent with you when I did, I probably wouldn't have the same level of the same viewpoints that I have just on the world in general. But since I did have that variety, since I did have those conversations, since I did have that instilled in me, not everyone has that because not every household has that. They're not always talking about race. Race is one of those things that is kind of, one of those hush hush taboo things that we don't really talk about in society.
I mean, we
Because
didn't really talk about it,
we
but
don't
it
want to talk
definitely
about it.
came
We
up,
don't want people to get
because you're
their
kind of
feelings hurt.
like clueless, so we just had to let. Yeah, no, you were like very, very.
Yeah, no,
Well, I mean, because I
it came
never
up a
talked to
lot.
even with a lot like Joseph, we had a running joke there because it would be like I'd pick him up from school, and Joseph's not my biological son. He's like full on Mexican, like Mexican. He looks Mexican. He is Mexican, and so when I'd pick him up from school, when he was like in elementary school, and he would be hanging out with his Mexican friends. Those were his friends, and I'd pull up. He's like, "That's my dad," and they would look at me, and I think I had my dreadlocks and my big beard then, and I'm pretty sure I did. And they're like, "Huh? What? What do you mean?" So I think the whole race thing is just really overthought. Overthought. Like it shouldn't even really be like a conversation, honestly, if you ask me.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it is a conversation because it's been politicized. That's just a fact of the matter. Is that it's been politicized. It's a political talking point when it really shouldn't be that
Well,
big of a deal. But we still deal with modern racism in a lot of different forms. There's still the colorism. There's still racism that way. But there's also the hate on ethnic groups in particular. Jews, biggest one that we know, are a big one of ethnic hate in our country. And so there's just a lot still that we're still dealing with, but in different groups, different circles see it, and different circles feel it now. Some circles feel it less, some still feel it more, and it depends on the area. That again, it really goes back to.
I just realized I got
Where's it here?
1%
I want to
left on
find
my
it.
phone. Sorry. Shit.
You're good. I was still looking here. When it goes back to SIO's 85 answer here earlier, yep, it's a strange phenomenon that non-mixed people seem obsessed with, telling you what you are. And you can't really let anyone tell you what you are. Only you know what you are. Only you know who you are. Race doesn't really play a matter in it. Race is just, how you look, kind of things like that. But
Can I
it's
kind
really
of
about
flip
who
that
you are as a
last
person, the
question?
things that you do,
I
the impact
think
that you
I
have on
think it's the other
society.
way around. I think it's the other way around, and I'll talk bad about mixed people all day long.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I think more so mixed people. But what I'm thinking though is what I
Let's talk bad about
see
anyone.
in dealing with different people is I think mixed people are more obsessed with the race than what anybody else is. Not all of them, but I'm saying like a lot of these comments were obviously like people that were probably a little bit overly obsessed with who they are. Like especially the last guy, he was all confused. But yeah, so I think there's a lot of and I'm guilty of it too. Like, and I make a lot of assumptions for a lot of different stuff, and I have to stop myself because I always kind of am wrong or I get in trouble. But I think there's a lot of assumptions of people to other people, which plays a part in what they're actually thinking. Because I know I do it. I do it all the time. I'm working on not doing it so much. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that. I think it's the other way around. Nobody can tell me like what race I am. Well, no, nobody can tell you anything. But the point is, I think you're more obsessed with it than what everybody else is. I think the majority of people don't really give a shit.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people do. I think there's a select group of people who do care about race and telling you what you are. And I agree. Like, how many other people do you know that can say, "Oh yeah, I'm 3/8 black"? Um, because it's just that's very common for especially for my generation, millennials, and then generations after, to be really obsessed with things that really don't
Yeah,
matter,
I
while
mean,
missing out on the things that matter more
if
in
you
life.
take my
So
other son,
that's kind of my final thought here.
his name was Robert, and he was basically looked Mexican with some black features, but long, straight black hair, about the same complexion as me. He was a quarter black, half Mexican, and there was a lot of white in that Mexican because like a lot of Mexican people are mixed. So he's probably honestly half white, quarter indigenous, and a quarter black probably at the end of the day. But if you ask him, he was black. He was black. He wasn't anything. He never told people he was Mexican or 3/8 this or a quarter this. Like you asked him, he's like, I'm black. And that's it. Ethnically he was black. Racially he was whatever he was, half white, quarter indigenous, and quarter black probably. Um so I don't really agree with that whole I think there's a lot of
I think a lot of the millennials and people are gonna hate me for this. Like they really feel sorry for themselves and they overthink stuff and they create a lot of issues that are non-existent. And I'm not saying that there's one generation of like big babies, but I mean they create a lot of issues that are non-existent. You know, they create stuff in their head that causes them other problems. But I won't even get into that. We're not talking about that. But
No, we don't have to get into all that, but I agree. There's a lot of problems so focused on other people's stuff, cancel culture is crazy, but yet there's no self-accountability. It's very easy to get obsessed with other people when you don't have any accountability for yourself. I feel like everyone's looking for meaning. Everyone's trying to find meaning in their lives, and there's meaning right in front of you. You look in the mirror, there's meaning right there. You look around you, there's meaning, right? There's meaning in everything you do. You just have to find it, and you have to place that meaning on something. And you have to, just be okay with who you are. Because when you learn about all the different parts of you, and I can speak of this firsthand, like when you learn about all the different parts of you and where you come from and you really embrace it and you accept all of it, it's like, damn, I'm like pretty cool. Like I have a lot of cool history that I was a part of. Like my great grandfather on my mom's side was his name was Frank Albert Young, Fay Young, and he was dubbed the Dean of the Negro Leagues because he was the first African American sports writer. And he launched the sports page of the Chicago Defender way back then, and when it was launched, and he was dubbed the Dean of the Negro Leagues. He had a relationship with Jackie Robinson, and there's some family lore with that story when that's depicted in the movie 42. In the movie 42, I know you haven't because you don't watch sports movies, but where Jackie goes and he talks to his wife, he's like, "I'm done playing baseball." He's like, "I'm done." This is actually where, like, firsthand accounts from my great aunt on that side who said no, like, yes, his wife was there, but Faye was also there in that room talking to him. And Faye was the one that said, "Jackie, you got to stay with it. You got to do it. You got to keep going." And really pushed him to keep going and become Jackie Robinson and have the number 42 retired. So it's really cool when you learn about all these different parts of yourself and you learn about the history of yourself. You find some really cool people along the way. You find some really cool history, and you find how you're connected to the things that you love, like, deeply. Like, I love baseball, and it makes sense because look at where it's coming from here. The man who was dubbed the Dean of the
that's a
Negro
cool
League.
story.
Just really cool. So with that story, anything else you want to leave when we wrap this thing up?
No, not really. I think we're okay. Gotta start having some guests on here at some point, but I guess we're okay with doing the Reddit stuff for a while. But yeah,
Well, the people can continue to tune in bi-weekly for that mix of solo episodes, lively co-host banter, guest interviews, which are coming. They'll be coming, people, don't worry. To keep bringing more diverse perspectives to the table. Because the more perspectives we get, everyone has a story. People like to tell their stories. Some stories are really wordy. I'm going to have to put a word limit on that, 25 words or less kind of thing. And we'll go from there. So make sure wherever you're listening to this on, wherever you're at, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you go over and you subscribe, leave 5 stars, leave a review, like, comment, share, subscribe. Do all the things you can to show the love of the podcast. If you want to get early access to this podcast, you can follow the link in the description. Head over to Patreon. Sign up to become a patron for as little as $1 a month and support the podcast that way. You'll get early access to every episode. And then also, if you also become a patron, you can join in on these recordings live, which is really cool too. I'll send you a link. You can become an audience member and you can watch the magic happen live. All the things. We won't get nervous. We won't get stage fright. You just get to sit back, relax, and enjoy while we record. So I think that's a really cool perk as well that not a lot of other podcasts offers for their people to be, audience members of the podcast. So other than that, you guys are great. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you here in a couple weeks.